Systematically using data and analysis and building on the strength of what we have that really works in terms of propelling Latino students into college, through college, and into our society and workforce. This agenda has emerged in a way that situates the fact that Latino students are critical to meeting the country's college completion goals, and more significantly, to ensuring that this country has its most precious resource going forward, human capital. Today, we are sharing with you a roadmap that is the product of work across many areas of this country. Why are we gathered here in this space at this time? And it is because of a relationship that we value deeply and want to celebrate. And that is with members of Congress, most particularly with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. It is my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus.
It's our community leaders, our business leaders that have to be engaged. Because when it's all said and done, where will they be looking for their skilled and educated workforce? But to our education system. We cannot fail. We are in this together. That's why I started off with the proposition that this is not a Latino problem or a Latino issue. This is an American problem, an American issue, and it really means the future of us all. So I want to again just applaud what has taken place today. Your participation is incredibly important, but don't let it end here with this discussion. I want you to be inspired, to go back and put into action different aspects of the plan, of the pathway. It has to happen.
We've invented something called the Partner Roll Call. We have with us today the Asian and Pacific Islander American Scholarship Fund, the Association of American Colleges and Universities, the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office, CEO for Cities, the Educational Testing Service, the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, the Hispanic College Fund, the Institute for Higher Education Policy, Jobs for the Future, the Manufacturing Institute, the National Center for Family Literacy, the National College Access Network, Project Grad USA, Universidad de Sagrado Corazon, University of California System, Univision Communication, the National Center for Community and Educational Partnerships, and the Alliance for Excellent Education.
Looking at this policy roadmap and putting together this policy roadmap is really to focus on action and what we can do. And embrace, we spend a lot of time diagnosing issues, diagnosing what's going on, and our intention is to say there are things that we can do in our respective sectors and our respective roles, and given our common cause, let's find ways to do that are intentional, that are meaningful, and that can help move the needle and show that we're taking responsibility and ownership with others to include Latinos in the dialogue about college completion and the work we are doing as individual organizations and as organizations of common cause. This roadmap is trying to find out ways that we can, and suggesting ways in a very pragmatic context, looking at the current economic environment, the political climate, of what can be done. And in fact, what we're already doing to help move the needle and increase Latino college completion. I hope as you take a look at the piece, you'll focus on a couple of the key areas that I'm going to mention here. First, we wanted to make sure we addressed an audience that isn't always knowledgeable about the Latino population. The importance for us of what I always call ignorance abatement, people who don't know and need to know about our population. So we started off with a profile of Latino students because it's data-based, it's data-grounded, and letting people know what is the actual profile of our students. Not to negate that there's so many issues going on, but we often find that if we talk about the Latino students from a marginal perspective, that we end up doing marginal policy work. And we're not focusing on this community being central to this nation as a whole. The roadmap is intended to be a tool to inform and compel dialogue, but also focus on the action. This is a powerful roadmap, we think, because it's got the commitment of our 60 partners, and we hope that will grow. But it's also, I hope we will use this in a manner to make sure as we think about higher education and our national goals, that Latinos are included in those, and that we think Who are these students that we're talking about when we raise issues about our nation's goals and needs in order to remain competitive and have a strong civic engagement in our constituency?
President Obama has looked at education and looked at the future of this country, and one of the real priorities, as we all know, is that this country would again lead the world in college completion. He thinks that's extremely important. I think it is, and I'm sure you all think it is too, as a priority for this country. But I'll tell you, this country cannot reach that level by 2020, which is the goal, to be over 50%, without a tactical plan to address Latino college completion. Latinos have to earn 5.5 million college degrees by 2020 to help us reach that goal. And that's a big order, so we have a lot of work to do. The Latino students are more likely to be non-traditional students, enrolled part-time, later in life, and at two-year institutions. Community colleges are so important, really, for everyone, but especially Latino students. They also tend to enroll where they happen to live. That's part of this profile that Deborah talked about, and that's very important when you're trying to identify how best we can deal with Latino college completion. For America to lead the world in college degrees, the federal government must focus on college retention and degree attainment. You can do all in the world to get students to finally get through high school and then work their way into college, and then to have them drop out in 6 months because of finances or other complications really is not good for them or good for this country. I'm so proud of the 60 national partners, and many of you are here, and I thank you for that, and please pass that on to your colleagues. This is the first product of collaboration. Collaboration is a very important word in education. Anything that works well involves collaboration. And this is the first real systematic look at the 60 national partners collaborating. The roadmap for ensuring America's future is really an excellent tool for stimulating and facilitating dialogue in the communities across the nation. It lays out the action needed to increase degree attainment generally and Latino degree attainment specifically.
The single most important thing we can do to make our cities successful, if we measure success in terms of per capita income, is to increase the percentage of people in our communities with a college degree. It turns out that conservatively, 58% of any city's success can be explained by the percentage of college graduates in its population. So, one thing we've been around the country for the last couple of years with the support of Tina and her colleagues at the Lumina Foundation is preaching this word that there is no economic development agenda in any city or in this nation unless education is sitting right at the top of it. And I think the point being made today is that there is no education agenda for America that doesn't include our fastest growing demographic segment. Consider Miami, where just a 1 percentage point increase in college attainment in that metro area would result in $4.1 billion annually in additional personal income. It's what we call, again, the talent dividend. Now, keep in mind that in Miami, that $4.1 billion in annual additional personal income, that's more than the international payroll of Carnival Cruise Line, which is Miami's largest private employer. And that you'll find time after time after time. What would happen when some big company was about to come to your state? And what would happen when there was word out, they'd call the governor, they'd fire up the corporate jets. It's like, let's get the tax incentives going. Let's do whatever we can to produce that revenue for our community. Well, that's the equivalent of a 1 percentage point increase in college attainment. That's why the work you're doing and Excelencia is doing is so important. And Miami, and let me put the Latino issue in perspective here. To get that $4.1 billion in Miami would take an additional 38,000 graduates in the population. Do you know how many Latinos are in Miami metro area today with some college, just like the Secretary said, they got to college, they just didn't finish. There are 234,000 Latinos in Miami with some college, no completion. So if you start doing that math, you realize what an enormous opportunity this is for those cities and for the U.S.
This is a necessary document, and I think in some respects it's a historical document because it tells us where we're at. But I think more than that, it tells us where we are going. It tells you, if you look at it carefully, if you read it carefully, you will see from your organization's perspective when you need to turn to the left and when you need to turn to the right and when you need to go straight and for how long you need to go. In some respects, it tells us what the best practices are, and I think the author should be commended. We know that good schools work. We know that motivating students to go to college is hugely important, especially for Latinos. We know that financial support is indispensable, but we also know that financial support, while necessary, is not sufficient. We know that we need to create a social support structure to support students as they get into college. We know what works to retain them. We know what works to graduate them. So I would argue that this document encapsulates what we know and what works. And this is where I think the real value of the document is, which is in a call to action for those organizations, and not just the 60 organizations that have signed on to this document. Because the reality is, there are many of us, we are all too small, we all do good work, but the size of the problem, the magnitude of the problem is such that we all have to recommit ourselves and rededicate our efforts to do more. Now, as Deborah and Sarita have all championed, we need to move that practice into action. The problems are too big for us simply to continue doing what we've been doing up to now.
The idea is that in these communities, that unlike our habit, which is to start with a blank piece of paper and let's diagnose as if nothing has preceded it, we start with the information here. And then we do the most important part, which is to zero in on what is it that we can do in this community now.